Okay, so I'm live. So, can everybody hear and see me? That would be very good. Honey, can you see me on Facebook yet? Mm. Hello. Hey, Kay, can you see and hear me? And Dolores, evidently you can. So, a very good welcome to you. I had to quickly shift over to StreamYard because there was some problem with my regular software. I have no idea why. Facebook is a bit strange. I think I'm going to have to completely change my setting, but that's a topic for another day. Hello, it's nice to see you. I was a little under the weather on Thursday night. That's why I had to cancel. I had a pretty tough time with my sinuses on Thursday. It was better yesterday and still better today. And now I feel almost normal. But if I have to blow my nose a few times in this video, I hope you'll understand. I will try to be as genteel about it as I possibly can be. So by now, you know that all kinds of events are being canceled due to the effects of COVID 19. Yeah, COVID 19, caused by the coronavirus. Now, of course, uh, since I was feeling under the weather on Thursday, I, of course, was naturally somewhat afraid that maybe I had contracted COVID 19, even though Bonnie and I have been very careful about that. Hey, Rick, how are you? Okay, even though we've been very careful about that, it's also been true that there are supposed to be three symptoms. Uh, and the symptoms for it, okay, are fever, shortness of breath, okay, and a dry cough. Okay, I haven't had any of those symptoms. I just seem to have had my normal sinus attack. I say normal because I get it at this time of the year. Kay says allergy season is kicking in down there, Joe. Yeah, that's probably what's happened. It's gotten warm here, and that's the time when the allergies kick in. When I was younger, I never had any allergies, but now I think I've been getting increasingly subject to hay fever. But, be that as it may, that's life, and I'm glad to report that I feel good. I haven't had any of the down feelings that one is supposed to have with the new virus. So I'm feeling good. My morale is good, and I'm ready to dive in. So let us dive. Let us dive. Uh, so, of course, the appearance and spread of the virus, okay, and also COVID-19, which is actually the disease that it causes, has put a crimp in the primary campaign. Okay, thank you, Kay. I have tried it. It's usually too strong for me. So I take another milder pill, which has helped me, okay, during the time that I've had this. So I've got something to help me. And Rick says, boosting my C to 4,000, 1,200. Getting a lot of medical advice here. Well, thank you for it. Okay, thank you for it. 4,000 D to 1,200 UI maximum. I already take D to something like I think 6 or 8,000 IU. And I get the magnesium, the supplements that I take. So I think that, okay, I'm all right. I haven't been taking any zinc lately. I have to watch out for supplements because I'm on a diet called the Budwig diet, which is for people who have had cancer. Okay, but anyway, so that's the situation. I take lots and lots, of D and have been doing that for some time. And that's generally been keeping me safe. But getting back to the topic of the day, it's really put a crimp in Bernie's campaign because he can't have any rallies anymore. He cannot have any town halls anymore. He can't have any events where those events are he can't have any events where those events take him to crowds. And so he's canceled such events. And in fact, the live stream, so-called debate with Joe Biden that's due for tomorrow is going to take place without a live audience. Thus far, the two of them are going to meet in the DC studios of CBS. And that's the way, it's going to be. And Kay points out, Bernie had a great fireside chat this evening. Yes, I thought it was great too. I saw that. I was very pleased with it. Also, the campaign had a phone call for volunteers, which I also attended, a little earlier. Steve says, hi, Doc and fam. Yeah, hi, Steve. Yeah, I guess we're fam here too, right? So, he did a fireside chat, this evening. He'll probably be experimenting with some panel events where 3 or 4 people come together with due care, of course. I suppose that might happen where people can get to Burlington, Vermont, by car, so they don't have to use any public transportation. That might work for people. But he might have enough people around the Vermont area within driving distance who can sit in on panel discussions dealing with Medicare for All and the Green New Deal, and other such things. The way I think he's going to fill his calendar is with a lot of events of this sort that will go out on his website and will be live streamed or will be videoed but later at such places as Twitch and YouTube, okay, and Facebook, and perhaps others, okay, as well, and then we'll go out on social media. So he is. I know you are, Steve, and thank you for worrying about me. Yeah, it's still scheduled for DC if they hold to the schedule. Okay, and so we don't know what kind of effectiveness such a program is going to create for him. It's really never been tried before by a campaign in the kind of volume that I think he's going to generate, because he really has to campaign. And the only way to do it now, okay, is online. Now that creates a problem. And the problem corresponds to the results that Bernie has been getting from people in various states. Specifically, Bernie in Michigan won by a very large margin of the voters who are under 50. Joe Biden won by a very large margin the voters over 50. There were more voters over 50 because older people over 65 do vote. They go, okay, and they vote. And they don't know much about the agenda of Bernie Sanders, and they don't vote on the basis of agendas. They vote on the basis of their familiarity with people. And while by now they're pretty familiar with Bernie, they are even more familiar with good old Uncle Joe. They're completely unfamiliar with 125 reasons not to vote for Uncle Joe, which appeared, okay, on Medium just a few days back. And they don't know really what Bernie's agenda is. They know he's the Medicare for All candidate, but they're not sure he can get it through Congress, nor do a lot of them understand that Bernie's version, okay, of Medicare for All is a considerable enhancement over the version, okay, of Medicare that they enjoy now, and that they would save money that a heavy majority of them desperately need if the Medicare for All program were actually passed. They're also very susceptible to the fiscal responsibility memes and to the idea that the government cannot afford this or that because it either has to tax or to borrow money to afford this or that. So they think that government spending has to be limited. Why do they think that? Well, for one thing, the Democrats have been knocking that into their heads since the days of Jimmy Carter, actually. But all through the 80s, when Ronald Reagan was running large deficits, the Democrats saw a political advantage in running against the large deficits of the Republicans, charging them with fiscal irresponsibility. This finally started to work in Reagan's second term somewhat, and then Reagan moved to institute some taxes and fees. to get closer to balancing the budget. Okay, and when Bush came into office, of course, he came into office on the slogan "No new taxes," in part because his constituency was getting angry because Reagan had been raising certain income taxes, not the income taxes, but certain other taxes. Okay, and fees, which of course are taxes by another name. So, so Reagan was doing that from about 1985, I guess, mostly through his second term. The Democrats had kind of chastened him, into doing that. And so Bush ran on no new taxes, in 1988, but he still ran on a fiscal responsibility platform. Okay, and so that was something that really everybody ran on in actually, in 1988, Dukakis also ran on that. Okay, but some deficits did occur under Bush. He attempted during his administration to cut back on the deficits. He broke his pledge not to raise taxes. Okay, and he raised them, and there was a recession, and people were kind of annoyed at it. Okay, nevertheless, in 1992, Bill Clinton and George Bush and Ross Perot all ran more or less on fiscal responsibility because that was Perot's main thing. He kept calling the establishment candidates and their parties crazy for running all these deficits. And of course, he had a very high-pitched voice, and it was rather piercing. And the mainstream candidates were getting kind of scared. What happened there, though, was he made some missteps, but during the campaign, and enough people actually strayed away from him and gravitated again towards the mainstream candidates that mainly what Ross Perot did was to end up splitting off some of the Democratic voters, but more of the Republican voters. And so Bill Clinton was in a position to win with a plurality of the popular vote, but a pretty good majority of the electoral vote in 1992. At the beginning of the Clinton administration, there was some debate within the administration whether they would stick to the fiscal responsibility memes, or whether they would do some deficit spending to help the people. And at the time, there were two people who really weren't afraid to deficit spend in the administration. One was Reich. He was the Secretary of Labor at the time, and the other was actually Hillary Clinton, who at that time was not such a fiscal hawk. But Bill Clinton, on the other side, had Larry Summers, as an advisor of his, but he especially had the Secretary of the Treasury, Bob Rubin, from Citibank, who was extremely persuasive and extremely convincing, and a rather good speaker. And he convinced Clinton to stay with the fiscal responsibility game and to go against the economic views of the people he had learned from, he had learned his economics from, okay, in graduate school. And so he decided against the very good advice that they gave him concerning how federal financing occurs. And they basically told him the federal government couldn't go bankrupt and that he didn't really have to worry about actually running deficits. But instead, he took the fiscal responsibility line and he restricted his spending. He put in a little stimulus at the start, but then he restricted his spending. He ran a strong fiscal responsibility platform in 1996, and in his second term, he ran something like 4 straight surpluses. But the economy expanded anyway because the Federal Reserve was pumping it up with debt. And there was also a bubble in Silicon Valley, which was driving the economy and the housing market. And it was all creating a situation where it looked like real prosperity. However, the bubble burst and the Clinton surpluses drew money out of the private sector. And when Clinton left, he had caused a recession. Okay, partly it was the bubble bursting that caused the recession, but also it was the Clinton surpluses. And there was a recession, not too deep a recession, but a recession, though, nonetheless, from 2000 to 2002. This is really one of the big reasons that George W. Bush won in the year 2000. The other big reason was that Al Gore wouldn't have Bill Clinton campaign for him because even though Clinton was still extremely popular, he was very afraid of the aftermath of the sex scandals in the last years of the Clinton administration. So, okay, so then you know the rest of the story. I think I'm not going to go through it all, but the point is the Clinton administration was an austerity administration. And after some expansion during the Bush administration, which was due to war spending and also defense spending, and also due to a housing bubble, the bubbles finally broke and caused the great crash of 2008 and led to the election, of Obama. So that's some history. And I guess the point I'm making here is that for a long period of time, the politics of the Democratic Party has been the politics of austerity. And that continues today after the initial stimulus, to get us out of the recession of 2008, 2009, and so on. As soon as the effects of the stimulus bill were felt, the Obama administration turned back to austerity. And from then on, they were trying to cut budgets, and they were concerned about also trying to cut Social Security, and Medicare too. And they tried to make grand bargains with the Republicans to do this. So now we have a situation where Bernie, of course, believes something entirely different. He doesn't really believe deficits are a serious problem. He believes that our serious problems are the climate emergency, Medicare for all, student debt, and should I say, you know the thing, okay, you know the list. Okay, there's a big list, okay, and it's on Bernie's site. It's his agenda is on Bernie's site. But to get back to the point, this has been dinned in to the heads of older voters now. Austerity, fiscal responsibility, dinned into the heads of older voters now for decades. They've been socialized into it. A whole generation of people from 1950 on up socialized into it. And when the mainstream asked Bernie the question, how are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for it? This is effective with the older voters from 50 on up. How does this reflect on the campaign? Getting back to the campaign. If the campaign by necessity is going to have to be a social media campaign, then it is up to us. And I think that a lot of people on this live stream right now, my people, not surprisingly, are people who are over 50, and you are the exceptions. But since you're over 52, you can maybe talk to your peers who are over 50 also and try to introduce them to the facts concerning Bernie's agenda, because social media can keep us involved. But Bernie can only do so much through social media. We also have to talk to our friends in small groups, and we have to talk to our relatives, most often on the telephone, and we have to try to get them to see that they will be better off, okay, if they vote for Bernie due to his agenda, and that he is actually more electable because of his agenda and because he doesn't have the baggage that Biden carries, which Trump will make use of to defeat Biden. We're already hearing about some regrets from some figures in the mainstream, wondering whether they didn't make a big mistake in nominating Joe Biden. Jake Tapper, in particular of CNN, seems to have been implying a few misgivings about that in some fairly honest comments. Okay, so that's been happening, and other figures, okay, in the mainstream are also wondering whether it was so good to get to. It was so good to try to close off the primary, as many of them have been doing. Okay, especially now with the excuse, okay, of the coronavirus, okay, and COVID. They want to try to shut down the primary, and Louisiana has already postponed its primary. And James Clyburn last week was suggesting that the party change the rules and bring the primary to a close, with Joe Biden ahead as the presumptive nominee. Now, the delegate count, okay, right now, with Bernie finally being declared as the winner in California, okay, I believe the last thing I saw was that Bernie was behind only by something like 133 delegates or something like that. It's not really that many, okay, at this point. It's far less than what Hillary was ahead by in this same position in the campaign in the 2016. And so, from a numerical point of view, the race is not over. And we have to carry on a vigorous campaign. Bernie has to carry on a vigorous campaign. He has to keep going. He has to hit now, has to hit at Biden and point out all his failings, especially on Social Security, okay, especially when it comes to Medicare, especially when it comes to trade, because again, there are two Midwest primaries, and Biden's positions on NAFTA, on the TPP, on the TTIP, and on the TSA have been just unconscionable and unacceptable. They're very, very bad. Okay. And so, in continuing the campaign, we have to do something different. Okay? Specifically, we have to take the videos and the live streams the Bernie campaign is beginning to introduce, the fireside chats and things like that. We have to introduce those to our relatives and friends through informal contacts, because older people, especially people over 65, are not much on the internet, not to watch things like political talks. What they mostly do when it comes to the political talks is they mostly go to cable. They get their news from cable. They get brainwashed, okay, from cable. Somehow, in quite a few cases, they've got phones. In quite a few cases, they have computers. What we need to do is get our friends and get our families off of cable and onto YouTube and Facebook, watching the videos, taking in the videos, pointing out that these are better sources of information than the mainstream. Even though we're not so polished, we in the alternative media are telling them the truth as we see it. Most of us on the alternative media are very direct, okay, and very honest. And we don't have a party line. We are individuals who think differently. And we're not like any of the networks. We have different opinions about things. We have our own opinions. Sometimes we agree a lot. Sometimes we disagree somewhat. But we're here. We're trying to give them the information as we see it. So, we need to introduce them to alternative media, to the things we're saying, to the things Bernie is saying on alternative media. He has great social media outreach. We have to bring more people into that outreach so they see what he's about and they see what the campaign is about. And Russ says, and I like the purple grape colored shirt you have tonight. Thank you, Russ. Actually, it's even a little on the pink side, but it shows up as grape color on YouTube or on Facebook or on StreamYard or whatever. But anyway, okay, if Bernie is to win, it's vital for us to act in this way. It's vital for us to contribute the personal contact, the personal influence, the personal networks that are necessary to give his social media campaign life, dynamism. He was using his rallies to do that. He was using his town halls to do that. He was using his live panel discussions with people in the audience to do that. But he can't have those anymore. So we have to do it for him in smaller groups. And we have to create that reach for his campaign. There's still a lot of that campaign to go, and we have to hurry up and do that. We don't have much time because these primaries are coming hot and heavy. Hot and heavy. There are the primaries, of course, on Tuesday, which are very important. Then things tail off a little. But by the end of April, there are the Excella primary, in which an awful lot of delegates are going to be up for grabs. If we can make Biden collapse a bit, even more than a bit, before the Excella primary start, there are enough delegates there to resurrect the Bernie campaign as a front runner. In the meantime, though, we have to lift him for the campaigns, that are coming up. He's got to get something close to a draw out of Tuesday. With 67 delegates from Arizona, 219 for Florida, 155 for Illinois, and 136 for Ohio. And he'll probably have to get that, close to equal, even in the face of machine cheating. We've seen that in a number of primaries already. There was a live stream. I don't know if it was a live stream. It was a video actually by Lee Camp by today that talked about all the different states where the exit polls are way, way different from the final results coming in on the machines. So we know there's monkey business going on because the final results are out of the statistical range that you would expect if there was no monkey business going on. So there certainly has been in many states so far. Many delegates are up for grabs on March the 17th, and on March the 24th, the Georgia primary, is up for grabs. In all these primaries, there are a huge number, of delegates, and Bernie has to climb close to even by the Georgia primaries because probably his chances are fairly small there. So, but he's got to do, reasonably okay there, maybe a 60-40 split. Maybe then he can gain it back in Puerto Rico. But anyway, then we build little by little towards the Excella primary, and he can begin to catch up somewhat. If he can get even by the April 28th primaries, which are known, as the Excella primary, he maybe can pull it out there. So that's what we have to point towards. And while we are pointing towards it, we have to play this role of boosting him with conversations we have with others. We must do that for him because his social media is likely not going to be enough. We have to bring people to his social media campaign. Okay, now I'm seeing some comments here. I want to go through the comments. Then I'm going to go to something else, but I want to see what your protocol, what suggestions you have. The voting machines are rigged. I completely agree. There's cheating, going on. But the cheating, is not enough. They're trying to make it so it's not quite so obvious. And what I'm trying to say is they're not cheating the whole way. So if Bernie does sufficiently well, as he did in California, they won't be able to cheat him out of the whole schmear. He can still win. So we have to boost him up as much as we can, and we have to do it with these interpersonal conversations. Susan Beaver says, so sad but true, and only trauma can jolt them out of it. I've had insanely frustrating conversations with them. And I've had frustrating conversations with people here too. Russell Garman says, and I like the purple grape color shirt. Yeah, I read that before. Okay. Kay says, I live in a redneck trailer park now, but it's better than the low-income apartment building I was in. Glad with all this sickness, I don't have to share elevators, etc., with all those other people, not to mention the bugs and mold dust there, and who knows what else. Fortunately, in the apartment that I live in, those problems are not very bad. It's a pretty clean place. Steve says, Doc is a hero. Thank you, Steve. And he says, Doc's wearing Laker purple. Rest in peace, Kobe, and all aboard. Laker purple. Gee, I was never a Laker fan. I was always a Knick fan. I remember the championships. Was it in 1971? The Willis Reed year? Oh, boy. Anyway. Jenk says he thinks the DNC might be able to substitute someone else for him at the convention. SMH cheating again. Yeah, they might be able to substitute. In other words, they might be able to convince him at the convention to just say he's too ill to continue and to go home, so that then they would have an excuse to substitute someone else for him at the convention. Look, they always wanted to nominate Kamala Harris as their candidate. Maybe they'll still try to do that. I mean, they shut out Tulsi, so she wouldn't be able to destroy Kamala again with about 2 or 3 minutes of sentences, of whole sentences. Steve says, I think they will. Kay says, I wasn't aware they could do that, but I guess they can. Yeah, they can do anything. They can do anything. The only question is, can they do it without actually splitting the party and not only losing the race, but losing the party? In other words, if they split the party in two, that could mean the end of the Democratic Party. It could mean the end of the Democratic Party. Because if it's bald enough and people think they're totally corrupt, the people under 50 could flock to a new third party headed up by Bernie Sanders. Yes, I know what Bernie Sanders said, but he may feel differently if they cheat him out of it at the convention in an arbitrary way by just substituting somebody else. He might say then, all bets are off, fellas. I'm sorry. You totally cheated. I'm not going to run as a Democrat anymore. I'll still caucus with you in the Senate as long as I still have my chairmanships, but I'm starting an entirely new party. Anyway, Gab Santomart says, hi, true, Yang Gang has been doing this live streaming for Humanity First Principles. I'm not sure what those first principles are, Yang Ganger, but I'd certainly like to hear about it. And Steve says, Kay, in a brokered convention, they can appoint anyone, even if they aren't running. Hillary, for example. They can appoint anyone, but okay. I don't think this is the topic in question here. What we're trying to do now is to ask ourselves, how can we support Bernie's campaign? How can we make his social media campaign, which we're stuck with, a complete social media campaign? We're probably stuck with it for the whole rest of the campaign, the way that coronavirus is going to spread now. I mean, it's going to spread because of delay in the Trump administration in making it easy to get the test. So we don't know who's got it and who doesn't. We have to know about that so we can schedule things and we can plan and we can provide the proper services for people. All this has to happen. And the testing is just getting started in the United States. We know approximately what's going to happen because something like it is happening in Italy right now. Okay, and Italy is a country of something like 66 million people. So it's about a fifth of the size of the United States, a fifth of the population of the United States. So if Italy has 10,075 cases, which is what I saw this morning, if I recall correctly, then in a few weeks, when the United States is at a similar stage to Italy, we could well have 60 to 70,000 cases here. And that is going to greatly tax our resources. We have to slow down the spread of the of COVID-19 and the coronavirus, of course. And Steve says, watch Jimmy Dore, Kyle Kulinski, and Mike Figueredo. Yes, watch them. They're very good. And Nomiki Konst also is excellent. And don't forget Jamal Thomas. And don't forget Crystal and Sagar. And don't forget Nico. And don't forget the Convo Couch fam. They're all great. They're all worth watching. Steve says, looking like we're going to need a new party. And Gab Santomart says, break two-party system. Will we ever live to see such action? I hope we live to see it very, very soon. We can't go on like this or we're not going to live. We've got to have that third party. If the Democrats do not nominate Bernie this time, we've got to split and destroy that party because we are running out of time and they are standing in the way of survival. We don't need them. They're claiming to be the party of the people and they're standing in our way because we would become the party of the people. Steve says, watch Kim Iverson as well. Yeah, Kim is sometimes good, but Kim has some strange ideas, and I don't think her approach to economics, it seems to me, is really ad hoc, even more, okay, than many of the others. You know, she just thinks something is a good idea, and she argues for it, but she doesn't have the background to talk about that, Steve. I'm sorry, she just doesn't have the background. Susan says lots of people are pushing the UBI bill from Tulsi, even AOC, which was very surprising. And that brings me, okay, so I want to summarize the message for tonight in the main topic of tonight, because I want to get to the second topic that I want to go into. And that main message is this. We have to support Bernie's social media campaign with our own person-to-person campaign in small groups. We cannot canvass for him anymore because it's too dangerous to all concerned for us to canvass. But we have friends, and we can still meet with friends. We can still meet with neighbors and talk to neighbors. If we're careful and if we go with gloves, and if we, if we're not sick at the time, and, we have to be careful. But we can arrange things where we can talk to people on the phone in depth, not just quick phone calls, in order to get them to go to an event of some kind, okay, a live event, okay, of some kind. But phone conversations with our friends that are more detailed. Perhaps we can go online on ourselves and use something like the free conference call app and have group conversations with 4 or 5 of our friends without being in personal contact, just to talk over the campaign with them. Okay, there are ways to do this. Susan says we should not meet in person. Probably right now, that's a good idea. But we can talk to them on the phone. We can talk to them using the free conference call app or Skype, okay, or Zoom, or other conferencing type of applications that are low cost or are free. Free conference call is free, and you can easily loop in a small number of people on free conference call. So Susan says we should be doing everything virtually, online, or with conference calls. I agree, Susan. That is the best way. Please not meet in person, especially the elderly. Yeah, I think that's also very, very good advice. If I implied something different, okay, a little earlier, I certainly agree with Susan. We should not meet, okay, in person. The only in-person meetings that should go on, even in small groups, are ones that, okay, are necessary. And even then, keep your distance, because this virus, okay, is airborne. If people should have to sneeze or cough, okay, or anything like this, that's how people get infected. Or even in a relatively a small meeting room, okay, if people meet, the virus can be active on surfaces and things like that. In fact, if you do happen to go to such meetings or fall into such meetings, it's good to keep disinfectant wipes around so you can wipe off the surfaces and things like that. Actually, Bonnie and I are starting to do that here. We're starting to do that here because we do see people. There's a front room here, and people go into the front room, okay, to talk. And some of them, okay, are going to continue to do that. And we might sort of stand at the door, but stand at, considerable distance, okay, away from them. But we have to be very, very careful about the interpersonal contacts. Susan says all of our in-person meetings have been canceled. That is very good. And Stephen Day, what the fuck with Universal in the BI? That's the original version, okay, of a basic income. In other words, give it to people as a basic right, so everybody gets it, including the extremely rich. And of course, okay, if you do that, then you have, well, okay, it all depends on the proposal. Okay, in the original notion, all 330 million people would have to get, okay, a basic income. In many of the proposals, though, this is cut down to people over 18 should get a basic income, but not people under 18. It's not exactly explained by why that is, but we are talking maybe a price tag of $3 trillion a year for it. So then the advocates, okay, of the UBI come back and say, well, it wouldn't actually be $3 trillion a year above what we're spending now, because if we did that, then we wouldn't have to have any recourse to some of the other programs. So some of the other programs, okay, would be going away. So the cost of it, once we take other programs away, would be relatively modest. But then that gets into the idea of, oh, so you're going to destroy the existing social safety net in order to give everyone $1,000 a month, which is only $12,000 a year. which is poverty. And then there comes some hedging and some distancing. People are not clear about all the implications, of a BI. Excuse me. All the implications of a UBI, and how it plays with other programs. I'll drink a little more water here. Okay. So, yeah, I've worked with Free Conference Call, and it works. We've used it. We would use Free Conference Call actually occasionally when we were all with the RP group. And we have used Free Conference Call, as well, in our new Macromedia group as well. So Free Conference Call does work. I know from others that Zoom works as well, and I've attended Zoom conferences as well. So I know that Zoom works also for people. So that can be done. But yeah, I guess that's what we have to do in order to supplement Bernie's social media, what he's doing on social media. Now, he can reach a lot of people on social media. At his fireside chat today, he had upwards of 100,000 people. So he can certainly do that. Okay, anyway, before I end here tonight, I want to remind you to share, like, and subscribe when I get this onto Facebook as a video. I'm sure I'll be able to post a video there, pretty sure. And when I get this up, on YouTube, which I'm also certain that, I'll be able to do once I download this video from Facebook. I know it's going to Facebook now because you're getting it. So that's it. I guess StreamYard as an app does have permission to post to Facebook, so they can post to my Facebook page because that's where you are. So, well, great. So, and then please go to my Patreon page, which is at patreon.com / Joe _ Firestone. And Steve says, can never find her YouTube. My YouTube is at the YouTube address, and my page is Joseph M. Firestone. My first name is Joseph, my last name is Firestone, and my middle initial K is M. So you should be able to find me at Joseph M. Firestone. Hang on just a second. Let me get this. Okay, so here's a link Okay. When this is over, okay, I will add a link to Facebook. I cannot do that actually through this application. Okay, I can't post a comment, okay, to my profile through this application. So when I get off, I will give you the link to my YouTube page. I'll make a comment then in Facebook and give you a link, okay, to my page. Okay. Kay is saying good night. Okay, already. Steve is saying good night, Kay. Sweet dreams. We'll get through this. Anyway, the last thing that I wanted to do was to take you through a one-pager from Yeva Nersessian and L. Randall Ray, otherwise known, okay, as Randy Ray. And this is a one-pager that was published at the Levy Economics Institute, okay, of Bard College. And I will leave you with the link to this when the video is over. And the one-pager is on what should be done immediately with respect to the coronavirus. It makes an important point that I want to talk about. Okay, so among other things, the authors say, on the fiscal side, the president pushes for a payroll tax holiday. Well, some economists are recommending cash giveaways to quickly put some money in people's pockets. Jason Furman, who's an economist who used to be with the Obama administration, has proposed a one-time payment for all citizens or tax-paying residents, okay, and every child. And he says, 1 week ago, I thought $1,000 per adult, $500 per child. Now I double or triple that. What both have in mind, of course, is injecting money into people's pockets to cushion them from the recession that is coming, because places will be closing down and they'll be losing jobs. And of course, that would be a great help to people. But what Yeva and Randy point out is that both proposals will make sense if we were dealing with the usual problem of insufficient demand. But it is hard to justify them as a solution to a problem of supply. The Institute for Supply Management reports supply disruptions for 75% of companies surveyed. Tens of millions of workers around the globe have already been forced to stay home from work, and quarantines will spread across the United States. What will people buy with the quick cash as the global supply chain comes to a screeching halt? A $60 hand sanitizer, perhaps? Somehow I doubt it. I think people will learn to make their own hand sanitizer, which, by the way, is not that hard. I can give you a link to that too, okay, in the comments to this when I get back on Facebook. And they say, what is more important is a set of policies that tackles the health crisis head on, while also mitigating the economic uncertainties faced by households and their communities. These include full coverage of medical costs for testing and treatment of COVID-19, and two, also mandated paid sick leave and full coverage of associated costs Three, a debt relief for families, and four, swift deployment of testing and treatment facilities to underserved communities. We'll probably need some demand stimulus, but these four steps require immediate attention. So they're saying take care of basics first. Get the medical costs covered so people go to the doctor, so that we slow the spread of COVID-19. Get also mandated paid sick leave and full coverage of associated costs so people again go to the doctor and stay out of work. And get also debt relief for families so people can afford any costs they might incur due to the fact that they won't be able to work. And four, swift deployment of testing and treatment facilities to underserved communities so that there will be supply of the medical services that people are going to need. So these four measures are measures that are designed to address the medical problems and to some degree the unemployment problems which we're going to get. Now, they grant that we probably are going to need some demand stimulus because there's going to be a recession. But they're saying take care of the necessities first, then perhaps we worry about things like the cash payments to people. First, take care of the health needs, okay, and take care of the debt needs, because people have to do debt repayment every month, and that drains them. Okay, then worry about also getting more money back into their pockets. I mean, what good is it to get money back into their pockets when it's only going to go to the repayment of debt? It won't be something good for them anyway. They go on to say the federal government should increase its share of Medicaid to cover all costs of testing and treating covered patients for the virus. And then parenthetically, they point out, incredibly, the Trump administration has just prohibited use of Medicaid funds to respond to this crisis, even though that was permitted after the 9/11 terrorist attacks, Hurricane Katrina, and the H1N1 flu outbreak. This will relieve state budgets, they point out. It will, and it is necessary, and Trump is ridiculous for not approving it. And they say that Medicare coverage, now limited to those age 65 or older, should be extended to all ages for testing and treatment for COVID-19. And that may be about to happen with the new bill going through Congress. I don't know how much treatment is going to get through. I think free testing is certainly going to get through. They say all medical care facilities that currently accept that are accepting Medicare patients would be reimbursed at normal Medicare rates for such treatment with no out-of-pocket costs. We should also ramp up testing following South Korea's example. To gauge the extent of the epidemic, improve containment, and mitigate uncertainty. Last week, emergency sick leave legislation was introduced into the Senate, but was blocked by Senator Alexander on the argument that it would impose costs on employers. House Democrats introduced the Families First, the Coronavirus Response Act, that was Nancy Pelosi, to supplement privately supplied sick leave with federal funding for workers through an application process. That would be a good start, but we need an immediate and universal program to include workers in small firms without but putting any additional financial stress on small employers. Okay, and why do we need that? Because the small employers are having their businesses cut back on tremendously at this time. You can't put additional financial stress on them. Okay, many of them are likely to go out of business as it is. For that reason, we prefer a universal federally funded program, they say, in which all employees would be required to provide paid sick leave to employees for absence due to the disease, including quarantine for exposure and care for family members. Employers would receive a refundable tax credit for wages paid to those on leave for the duration of the epidemic. The president has suggested tax postponement for affected families. I don't think so. I don't think all tax postponement is going to do is saddle people with a debt. It might be an interest-free debt, okay, in this instance, but if they're losing income now, then we'll have reduced assets by then, and they'll have to pay the taxes out of the assets then. So that's no good. They need to have their assets augmented. Some Democrats, with grants from the government, with cash from the government. Some Democrats are also suggesting that payments on student loans and federally guaranteed mortgages could be postponed. There also is a proposal for an additional $50 billion allocated to the Small Business Administration to provide loans in affected areas. All of these ideas are a good start. I don't know they're that good a start, but because the economic effects will linger far beyond the viral epidemic, we need to make progress on permanent relief for families overburdened with student loan debt and mortgage debt. Absolutely. And here he's talking about cash payments to boost families. Or they are talking about cash payments. Should have said they, especially with the ever being the senior author. In response to the crisis, China famously built new hospitals from the ground up in a matter of days. And the United States has already wasted months it could have used to prepare for the epidemic spread. While the United States will not build hospitals in a few months, we must expand treatment capacity in underserved areas around the country. Our response so far has largely been to send infected people home to self-quarantine, where they expose others to the disease, clearly an inadequate response. We need to protect communities and to provide care, even for those who are not seriously ill. Temporary field hospitals will need to be dispersed around the country to deal with the inevitable explosion of infections. Finally, we hope that after enjoying a payroll tax holiday, plus a taste of what with Medicare for All and universal, I can't quite see that. Oh, and getting a taste, of Medicare for All, and a universal sick leave program. The Americans would exert pressure on their office holders to keep those as permanent policies after this crisis actually passes. So, the most important point in this, the proposals, are all good. But the most important economic point, which is made in this, is that there is a danger of just feeding cash into the system when supply disruptions have occurred. And that danger is an inflation danger. And it's not that some inflation is necessarily so bad, but we have to be able to gauge and we have to be able to deal with the extent of the supply disruptions. If we can slow down the progress of the disease so people do not all get sick at once, then more people will be able to continue to work and to keep the production up. When the production of goods is kept up, then we can have a situation where we can give people more cash and it will not cause inflation. But we have to take care of the basics first of slowing down the spread of the disease so people can get treatment at the facilities we have. And also for another reason, we don't have any cures right now. In other words, we don't have any antiviral medicines that can treat this particular disease and help people to get over it. And we don't have any vaccines yet. We won't have any vaccines for a year to 18 months. So we may have the antivirals fairly fast, but still over the next month, a month and a half, it's critical that we slow down the spread of the disease so people who get seriously ill can have some hope of a cure. Now, to emphasize again, while a large number of people, a large proportion of people are likely to contract the disease, we know from statistics around the world that 88%, okay, of the people will not have severe disease and will get well. Of the other 12%, 7% will have severe cases. Some of those may require treatment in a hospital. Then there are 5% that are going to be fairly critical cases and will have to be treated in a hospital, and some percentage of them, okay, are going to die. We know that. Our task is to cut down on the death rate by flattening the peak of the curve of infection so that it's a relatively small number of people who need help at each point, okay, in time, and who are of such need of help that they have to be treated in a hospital with antivirals that we don't even have yet, but may well have within a month, okay, or a month and a half. So we have to keep that in mind. So I think this is a very good one-pager. I will leave a link for you in that. I had it in the original Facebook description. So what I'll do is I'll edit, okay, the description now and get these links up there for you. That I originally planned to put in, but didn't have time to put in when I was going away from XSplit and going to StreamYard. So I'm going to check in with you and see if there are any more comments. Let me check in on StreamYard. Susan says, I'm hosting a virtual phone bank tomorrow for Bernie, but I'm not sure how to use the software. Okay, I haven't used virtual phone bank software myself, so I'm not sure of how to use the software either, Susan. Okay, and Rick Maynard said, guide to hosting virtual events, Bernie 2020, and leaves a link. Thank you, Rick. Steve Day says, better to streamline Social Security programs and qualify COVID affectees. Yes, it is better to streamline Social Security programs. That probably would be better. There's no question, okay, of affordability. All you have to do is use overt congressional financing. And by the way, I wanted to tell you about that too. I did a Twitter storm the other day in which I outlined the basics of overt the congressional financing. I'll leave you a link to the first tweet in the tweet storm. And from there, you should be able to unroll the whole thread. So you'll probably be interested in that because it gives the best way, from my point of view, of financing things like expanded Social Security, okay, or anything that we want to deficit spend, okay, in order to do. And Kay says, I was amazed to find some at the Dollar Tree today for $1. Oh, hand sanitizer. The Dollar Tree comes through. Only problem is going to a Dollar Tree. And Rick says, 7 organizing strategies for a time of social distancing. Oh, that's a useful link. Thank you, Rick. Susan says, thanks. I read this, but still not sure which tool to use. Have you done it? Steve says, many are being thrown into homelessness due to the virus shutdown. Okay, Rick said there's 60% alcohol disinfect from the outside. For hand sanitizer on wire, there was a recipe for making hand sanitizer from alcohol, a bit, okay, of tea tree oil, and what was the other ingredient? Aloe gel. 3 ingredients. And I think it called for 60% alcohol. And the rest was aloe gel and the tea tree oil. I'll give you a link to that article, okay, in Wire, okay, as well. And Rick helpfully gives a link to free conference call. Steve says, I can never find your YouTube. Gab Santamont says, a new report claims big tech companies used legal loopholes to avoid over $100 billion in taxes. Yes. Amazon and Facebook should give their fair share. Kay says, night all, glad to chat with you all tonight. Susan says, Joe and Bonnie, please take care of yourselves. Stay at home and practice social distancing. We have been. We've been doing it all week. We were doing it the week before also. So we are practicing social distancing. Everybody practice social distancing. We want to slow down the spread. NHCD1 picks its Bernie delegates. New Hampshire CD1 picks the Bernie delegates. Rick Maynard, Graham Elwood, and Ron Placone are great sources of news. Yes, they are. Steve says Status Quo is a great source as well. Yes, it is. I watch all of these things. Steve Day says search your state's XSCD Dem Party state delegate plans for the actual delegations to Milwaukee. Be in. Doc, if you could run YouTube simultaneously, we could send you super chat money. Yes, I know, but I think before I get any super chat money, I have to have 1,000 subscribers. And I have just a handful of subscribers now, must be about 40 subscribers. So I've got to get my subscriptions up before I can receive any money actually through YouTube. So as of now, the only way that I can receive any needed support is through Patreon, which is why I always give the Patreon. And Steve Day says Congress fiscally inject now, employee subsistence. Steve Day says services before cash. Also goods before cash. Our problem now is that since so many businesses are slowing down operations or are reducing operations, there's a shortage of goods on shelves. And the Jimmy Dore show actually promoted MMT, showed the clip from Secretary Bernanke, and talked up Stephanie Kelton. Yep, I think Jimmy might be aboard finally at last. Doc, take care of yourself and Bonnie. We will. We take care of each other. And Steve Day does incubation and severity rates are based upon a small statistical sample here in the novelty stage of COVID-19 joining us. I don't know that it's such a small sample anymore, Steve, because they've got worldwide now. The cases are in the hundreds, of thousands, and we can get the severity rates down depending upon the actions of our healthcare systems, but so far, the places where the severity rates are going down are in places like China and Korea, especially Korea, where they've been rather draconian, as well as China, and rather careful. And they have been really cutting down on the case fatality rates, to the point where they've been at 0.7. I don't know if they're even under 0.7, but that's where we have to go. Yes, Steve, overt congressional financing, fuel injected. Steve Day, that is. Steve Gonzo says when. I'm not sure who Steve Gonzo is replying to here. Oh, no, Susan Eldridge says Steve Gonzo when. Let's see what Steve Gonzo said. Oh, I think Susan is asking for a link, Steve. Okay, I think that's it. Sorry for the technical difficulties today. I'll try to sort them out, but if not, when I next come on, I'll be using StreamYard again. I think it's certainly viable for me to use it. Okay, it's not a problem. And I will use it if I run into another, I don't know if it's a Facebook problem, okay, or if it's an expert problem, I have to debug it. I don't know where the problem actually originates, but obviously it doesn't exist with StreamYard. I've heard that South Korea is doing 10,000 tests per day. 10,000 tests per day. No, it's not too many, Steve. We need to have that many tests here in the United States, more in the United States. We are a bigger nation. We need to have information. We need to have situational information. A situation about how far the coronavirus has actually penetrated our society and where the hot spots are. The epidemiologists really need this in order to understand where it's been and where it is and where it's possibly going. They need this. Okay. So anyway, that's very important. So I will now say good night. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for coming. And thank you very much for all of the discussion. I very much enjoyed this, and I hope that you did too. Please share the hell out of it. And please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you very much. Too many Steves on here. Yeah, Steve Gonzo and Wolf Brandt and L. Stephen Day. Yep. But actually, I'd like all the Steves I can get. Why not? Steves are great. Bye.